Hey everybody, this is the Divine's Finest. Welcome back to my channel. This is episode 1 of my podcast, and today we're going to dive deep into something that I think so many of us have to deal with, but we don't have the words for it. If you've ever had somebody from your past that you just couldn't stop thinking about, even if you've blocked them, or maybe it's been months or even years since you've even heard from them or talked to them, whatever the case may be, we're going to dive more deeper into that. And of course, this podcast that I'm doing today is going to be about why you can't let them go. And we're going to go into why and basically, I can't even get my words together, you guys. We're going to talk about how to cut those energetic cords that we have with that person and get a better understanding of why we have them, okay? So, for example, maybe you are familiar with these energetic cords, right? Maybe you've heard of it. Maybe you've, you've been knowing about it for a while, and maybe you've been doing some healing work. You're glowing up. You're focusing on your dream life or career, whatever the case may be. And then maybe out of the blue, this person's name pops up in a tarot reading, for example. Okay. Or maybe you see their name like on a license plate, or, you guys get the drift, right? And they just basically pop out of nowhere, right? If that's happening to you, the chances are that you have an energetic cord that is still there. Yep, that's right. It's still there. It hasn't completely gone away. Now, don't be alarmed, because we're going to dive deep into this of why this occurs. And don't think that you have an issue, because you don't, okay? It's just something that there's just some things that you just got to dig a little bit deeper, to see where it's coming from and how you can completely just detach, okay, or get rid of it. All right, so let's get right into what types of cords they are, okay? We're going to talk about how they form, the different types that are out there, and how you can finally start cutting them, because I've been through it myself personally, and the healing work that I've been doing, if you guys don't already know, has really helped me significantly, you guys. And in case you're wondering what kind of work I've been doing, I'll be talking about it more in more episodes soon, soon in the future. But basically, if you guys can get into attachment styles, that's definitely going to help you a lot, okay? But I won't get into that right now, but that's going to be for another episode. But let's get right into it, okay? So we're going to talk about what are energetic cords. So basically, energetic cords are unseen spiritual ties formed between two people. They're real energy, and it's like an invisible thread that keeps your energy connected to somebody else's, okay? These cords can be healthy or they can be unhealthy. For example, in love, they often form during emotional closeness, sexual intimacy, trauma bonding, or even spiritual chemistry, you guys, okay? But when a relationship ends or becomes toxic, the cord doesn't always completely disappear. That's when it starts to weigh on you, okay? That's why you might randomly feel their presence, like you might feel like that they're around you or that they're watching you, right? Or you get emotional for no reason, or wonder why part of you still feels tied to them. That's the cord talking, you guys, okay? And, like I said, I've been through this before, you guys, with somebody that I was kind of on and off with, for, oh geez, maybe for a good 10 years or so, if that. And I know that the struggle is real because, you're kind of like mind boggling, like, like, you could just be like, oh my God, why am I still thinking about this person? And, or you could just, like, for example, you could just start crying out of nowhere if you watch something like on YouTube and then it reminds you of that person. So if you're kind of experiencing that, for example, that's the energetic cord that you still have attached to that person, okay? And, and it's not fun. I know it's not fun, okay? Anyway, so moving on. So let's get right into the types of cords, okay? Because not all cords feel exactly the same. So the first one we're going to talk about is basic emotional cords, okay? Now, for example, these can happen in short-term situations or crushes. All right, they're usually light and fade with time. So for example, maybe like you've only gone on a date maybe a couple times with that person, right? Maybe you find this person really attractive, you might have some things in common with this person, you get a good vibe from them. That's usually that using that example alone is kind of an example of a basic emotional cord, okay? And you usually don't get attached to somebody. Well, I would think, you normally don't get attached to somebody who you've only been on a couple dates, really, right? Because 9 times out of 10, you don't know how things are going to go for the long run and this, that, and the third. Okay. But I just wanted to throw an example out there. That way you guys have a better idea of what a basic emotional cord is. Okay. So the second one we're going to talk about, oh yeah, okay. This is a really, really common one, you guys. All right, is a sexual cord, okay? Anytime you have sex with somebody, a cord forms, you guys. Especially if it's one where one of you is emotionally open. So for women, for example, we tend to hold on in the womb space, our sacral chakra is usually what I like to call it. Okay. That's where, like, so basically whenever you have sexual intimacy with somebody, that can really have a really big influence on you because that's when, your emotions start stirring up and you feel like you have a really divine connection with that person, and then it could get to a point where you just can't stop thinking about them, and then who knows, you might have that urge to want more of it, or whatever the case may be. I know everybody's experiences is different, but hopefully you guys kind of get get the gist of that. Well, at least a better example of that, okay? Now, the third one we're going to talk about is complex emotional cords. Now, now this is actually something that I've experienced with multiple people. And not only that, I'm still actually working through it myself, okay? Now, these cords tend to be very thick and layered. They form from love, emotional highs and lows, inconsistent dynamics, or even feeling like someone is a quote unquote soulmate, when in reality they're actually emotionally unavailable. Now, how many of you can relate to dealing with somebody like that? I can proudly raise my hand, okay, when it comes to these. And these are usually the hardest to break through, all right? Especially if you've been, emotionally and sexually tied to that person. You have a lot of interactions with them sexually or not. Um, and in a lot of cases, a lot of people tend to deal with people like this long term. And not just that, but for example, a lot of us tend to get caught up in these types of people for too long, and we would miss the red flag. So if that person is not even communicating with you every day, that's definitely something within that person that you're dealing with, where that should show you they're not available. Okay, why would you want to deal with somebody who's constantly hot and cold with you? Okay, I'm just throwing out an example, but that's pretty much like an example of a complex emotional cord that you can have with somebody. Okay, now going into the fourth one, we have echo cords. Now this is actually what I'm actually so for example, I'm coming out of a complex emotional cord I have with somebody, and now it's becoming more of an echo cord. Okay, so I'm pretty much in transition, for example. All right, but basically echo cords are, it's basically where you're still energetically like connected to the person, but it's like the cord is not so intense, okay? So, for example, the person won't really be in your mind so much. They won't be popping up in your mind. You would gradually stop, having emotional reactions towards them out of the blue, kind of like with what I kind of mentioned earlier, right? Now, generally, you would kind of start like, you would actually start feeling them more. For example, like you would probably start feeling them missing you. Or you may feel like that they're trying to reach you telepathically, even if you're not in contact with that person. Okay. But I can tell you right now, the echo cords, that's actually kind of where you want to be, because that's actually a really good sign that you're pretty much almost detached from that person completely. Okay. But they're definitely way less intense, you guys. And that's really where you were, so if you're really trying to break the cord with somebody, this is like, you'll know you're progressing if it's got to this point. Okay. Now, last but not least, we're going to talk about umbilical cords. Now, these types of cords are womb centered. Okay. Now, this one is very, very powerful. All right. It's basically where your womb is still connected to somebody, especially if you wanted to create life with them or felt very bonded, but you feel like you gave too much of yourself and now you're calling your energy back. Now, I haven't really heard of this specific cord too much. So, I can't really think of an example to kind of go more in depth, but I'm sure that there's more, there are some examples of these online if you were to look them up. So, but basically those are 5 common chords, romantic chords that we have with individuals. Okay. So now let's talk about the signs that you're still cord tied to this person. And I kind of already talked about a little bit of this anyway, right? So here's how you can know that the cord is still active. Number 1, you're randomly thinking about them, especially obsessively. Okay. I think that's a given. All right. Feeling drained after they come to your mind. Seeing them in your dreams or readings repeatedly. Okay. Yeah, this is a common one too, you guys. I've definitely been through this one as well. Like, I would see a title in a tarot reading, for example, and it would automatically remind me of that person. I'd be like, oh my gosh, is that about what's his name? Or is that about, the person that I just cut off, or whatever the case may be, right? Another sign is having a hard time letting them go even when you want to. Yeah, that's a tough sign. That's a tough one, because it's never easy to let somebody go, especially if you have this whole idea of thinking that they're going to change, one day, whatever the case may be. But trust me, guys, if you do the correct inner work, it will get easier. I promise you. Okay. And another sign, the last final sign, is feeling pulled to check on them, or wondering, you're having those what ifs. This was my hardest one to break, you guys, because, you're all, especially if you're not in contact with that person, because, you're just kind of like, dang, like, what if there's something I could do to make them change their mind? Or, or a very common one is like, maybe they started dating somebody else and they started treating that other person better than you did. And then it makes you question your worth, and you're just like, why couldn't I get that treatment? Or whatever the case may be, right? Because don't get me wrong, your feelings are valid if you feel that way, but don't ever think that it's because you're not good enough, okay? It has nothing to do with that. And also, guys, if you really look deep into it, here's the thing. For example, if somebody is emotionally unavailable, do you really think that other person that they're with is going to just live happily ever after with that person? Do you think that things are always good on the other side? It's not, you guys. The thing is that, especially emotionally unavailable for a lot of people, the thing is that behavior still plays out even with that other person eventually, even if you don't see it. Like, even if there's no, if there isn't any full proof, how do you really know what's going on behind the scenes? I'm just saying, okay? I know it's a little bit off topic, but I feel like it's very relevant, because a lot of us think that we're missing out on that person when we're really not, okay? Because it's not, the grass is never always greener on the other side, okay? But going back to the topic here, those wondering, those what ifs, feeling pulled to check on them to see what they're up to see if they're thinking about you or if they're going to reach out to you. That was a really, really hard one for me to break, and I'm still on the verge of coming out of that myself. But honestly, guys, the more you work on yourself, the more you go within, the less validation you're going to need, and you're just kind of like, you're just basically going to teach yourself to be like, oh, you know what? I don't really need to do that anyway. And plus, on top of that, guys, whenever you feel pulled to check on them or wondering what if or whatever the case may be, you're just feeding that cord that you have with them. Bet you probably didn't know that, or did you? Okay, you're just feeding the cord, you guys, and you don't want to do that, okay? So, all right. But yeah, if any of this hits, trust me, you're not crazy. The energy is still alive between the two of you. But the good news is that, like I said, you could take your power back. All right. And you can move forward from this. All right. So the next topic here, we're going to talk about how to cut these energetic cords. Ooh, this is the juicy part, you guys. Okay. Here's what worked for me. It's deep, but it's also so beautiful, you guys. Okay. So one thing that's definitely helped me cut these energetic cords is, of course, I pretty much I do like a daily, ritual, I want to say, not like an evil spell ritual, like some of you guys may think. It's more like a daily ritual of healing my anxious attachment style. Okay. Um, which, let me see. Yeah, I mean, like, I pretty much have that. And I actually basically I've been reading some books. Some of you guys may have heard of the book called Attached. All right, I can't think of the names of the authors, but you can find it on Amazon. Okay, and I have bought a really great anxious, like working through your anxious attachment for women workbook. I might have to put in the references below this podcast so you guys can find these references, because they're really good. They have some really good exercises and whatnot in them, so they're really good to look at. I would highly recommend. But also, I mean, not just that, not only do I do my daily rituals like at least a couple times throughout the day, I also do a visualization, you guys, okay? And basically it's a womb visualization that I do. I know some of you guys are like, "What?" It's basically where I imagine my womb being connected to my dream man's heart. Yes, I do have a dream man, you guys, okay? Who doesn't have a dream person, all right? Where I connect yeah, I already did just say that. I basically imagine my womb being connected to my dream man's heart with a golden umbilical cord. All right, this helps me redirect my energy and stop leaking power into the past. Okay, and it's a pretty quick visual. It's not like, it's not something that that takes a long time to visualize. Okay. Now I feel like I don't have to do it as much anymore, but basically whenever like a past person pops up in my head, I have a mantra. Okay. And basically the mantra, is what I say is, he's no longer here. I'm with me now. And that centers me back into my present. And I would also place my hand over my heart or my womb as I'm saying it. Okay. Now let's see. Now, there are some energetic rituals you can do. I don't really do these per se, but you can. There are womb massages you can do. There are salt baths to cleanse the aura, all right, for yourself. And then, of course, there are definitely some cord cutting meditations you can do as well, too, that can definitely help with this, all right. And most importantly, you guys, I stopped feeding the cord, okay? Like, and I know I just talked about this too, and that's going back to, this, remember I was just talking about the signs that you're still cord tied, when it comes to checking on them, so, and that's one, so not only did I have to stop looking at videos, of readings and stuff like that, right, about that person, I don't look at their social media, okay? At all. All right. So no stalking on their pages. I even stopped asking about them in tarot readings, because I used to always want to, and I'm still kind of working on that. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to lie. I know sometimes it's hard, but, or even if you can at least just stop doing readings on them as much, I think that will help. But of course, you still want to work on coming away from that. You know what I mean? So basically now, I focus on my energy of who I'm becoming and who I'm calling next. Okay. So that pretty much sums it all up, you guys. I hope everything makes sense. But basically, I just wanted to end this podcast by saying that cutting cords isn't about pretending the past didn't matter, okay? It's really about honoring the lesson, letting the energy go, and making space for something that's going to be so much better for you. Okay? So if this resonated with you, let me know. Drop a comment. All right? Even if it's just a like, doesn't matter. I just want the word to get out there. Okay? I'd love to go deeper in this topic or even guide you through cord cutting meditations for you guys in a future episode. Just know that you're not alone and you are allowed to move on fully. Okay? Remember that you're not hard to love. You're just done giving your energy to people who couldn't hold it. Okay? So, like I mentioned, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. You guys, all right, if you want to book a personal reading with me or anything like that, you can always check out my website, which is www.thedivinesfinest.com for more information, all right, about the services that I provide, or you can simply shoot me an email. Everything should be in the description box below if you need to contact me or any of that jazz, okay? Thank you guys so much for listening, and I'll catch you in the next podcast episode.